Team, so this is scenario one. Just imagine that we're standing on top of an avalanche slope. We're watching our team, just one of our team ski down, and it starts to crack. It starts to crack. What should we do? The first thing that we should do, at the top of our lungs, as loud as we can, we should yell, avalanche! Avalanche! And the reason for that is we want to warn the person on the slope, let them know so they can ski out of the way, but also let the rest of the group know so that they can pay attention. The second step, that's just as important, is we need to watch the person skiing down. What we suggest that you do is you point at the person. Keep pointing at them as they go down, and keep pointing until you lose sight of them. And then still keep pointing at that spot until the whole slope has stopped moving. Because once it's stopped moving, then we can reference that point of a tree or a rock or some sort of other fixed object. That's important because that spot becomes the last seen point. And the last seen point is where we're going to start our search. That last seen point is where we're going to start our search. Hey team, one of the first things you want to do after there's been an avalanche is get on the radio. Everybody has one of these on the lapel mic, BCAs. Get on the radio and let the rest of the team know. If you're with the guide, you don't need to, they'll do that. But if you're not sure or not with the guide, get on the radio and say what's happened. So here's an example. Hey team, there's been an avalanche. We need some help. We're on run Neptune East 5 and there's one person involved in the avalanche. Now, before we start our search, there's a few things we need to do. First, we need to do a head count. Check how many people we've got. Second thing, we need to turn off cell phones. That's super important. We need to turn off GoPros. We need to turn off heated gloves, heated socks, heated boots, anything that's going to interfere with our transceiver. The next thing that we need to do is we need to turn our transceivers from send mode to search mode. From send mode to search mode. You'll know you're in search mode because the little orange tab will stick out the side of the transceiver. The next thing that we need to do is assess for further danger. And after having an avalanche just like this one, these red areas you'd have to be very suspect of that they could also avalanche. So we'd want to avoid those areas. So to get down, we would have a choice. We could go over the crown, which is really difficult. Other option would be to make a path along the ridgeline to start with until we came to some thicker trees and then make a path through the thicker trees down to the last seen point. This might be the safer option. This will be something that your guide determines is the best way. He may only take one or two of you and leave the rest of the group up the top, and then he'll radio you when he wants you to come down, and he'll ask you to very carefully follow his path down to the last seen point. And then team, once you're at that last seen point, the first thing that you want to do is look for obvious visual clues. Things like hands sticking out of the snow, gloves, skis, poles, packs. They're all good indications and they'll point to a place where you might find somebody. Obviously, if you see a hand sticking out of the snow, you don't even need to use your transceiver. You just go to the hand and just start digging them up. So that's really, really good. If the visual clues aren't working out, then what you want to do is start zigzagging down the slope, down the avalanche path until you acquire a transceiver signal. And then once you acquire that signal, just simply follow that signal as we've learnt before till you get to the lowest number. Then build that box. Once you've built the box, probe in the middle of that box. Once you've probed and got a probe strike, then start digging. And we've talked about how to do that before. If you dig somebody up and they're unconscious and not breathing, the first thing that you want to do is check their airway. It'll probably be full of snow. Clear that out now. And once you have, give them 2 rescue breaths. Give them 2 rescue breaths and see if their chest moves at all. If it doesn't, if they're not breathing, if that doesn't stimulate a first breath, then move on to chest compressions. Chest compressions should only be done if you've been trained in first aid, but essentially it's pushing on the center of the chest around about 100 times per minute. We want to keep doing that until we can get an AED to them to shock their heart out of an abnormal rhythm. And team, the last thing that I want to touch on is we've got a bunch of rescue gear. On the roof of the cat, there's rescue toboggans, spine boards, and splints. Behind the driver's seat in the front of the cat, there's oxygen, a full kit. There's also an AED in 2 of the cats. That's important. But in the back of the cat with you, there's a large orange bag. And in that orange bag, there's a whole big variety of important first aid supplies. So just to let you know where some of that stuff is.